Thank you, Dave. The bill to bring back the trams to Edinburgh passed the Scottish Parliament in March 2006. It was originally estimated to cost 375 million, but it ended up costing around 750 million at least. It had a targeted completion date of 2011, as you can see. This is a sign on Leith Walk that eventually got taken down. The first tram ran in 2014. Shortly after it became clear that the project was like really, really severely late, an advertisement panel was posted at Edinburgh Airport with the slogan, "Edinburgh trams, worth waiting for." This logo and slogan coincided with the last round of contractual disputes in the project, and unsurprisingly did not last long. The only places I ever saw it was at that sign at the airport, and in this tiny, teeny, tiny little advertisement thing on a tram, on an example tram on Princes Street, which was coincidentally the biggest visitor attraction that year in Edinburgh. This slogan generated a very, very small controversy when Gavin Brown, local Tory MSP, called it, quote, "one of the dumbest slogans and signs I've ever seen." His campaign to have the advertisement removed didn't really gain any traction. But what neither Gavin nor any of the reporters writing about his complaints managed to do was actually Google the phrase "worth waiting for." If they had, they would have learned that it's primarily a slogan used by chastity and abstinence movements. This is a small, small sampling of images tagged "worth waiting for" on Instagram in the past couple days of this week. They're pretty amazing. Perhaps most disturbing about these Instagrammed purity slogans is how anti-woman they are. They're all implying that men will play around and enjoy themselves and that women should wait until God guides them towards them. Also disturbing are the ones where the people are clearly oblivious to the really obvious double entendre, like what comes easy won't last and what lasts won't come easy. In terms of the trams, though, the slogan and the accompanying sentiment could maybe be seen as an admirable, though totally failed, reaction to knee-jerk negativity that goes along with public works projects in general. Edinburgh has a long and an illustrious history of failed public projects. And I might need two hands here. And certainly the trams project was, for several years, universally despised. So it seemed to me that the slogan and the concept needed to be explored further, so I made T-shirts. I did my best to retain the original design, and yeah, including the kind of like really badly done sort of like slanted lettering and all that. So anyway, I'm going to be selling these afterwards. So if you're interested, £5, you can look just like me. I've brought tons. My first outing of the shirt in public was at Exercise Salvador. Oh, there's one right there. The first public trust of the trams, Exercise Salvador. I signed up right away. I was second on the list. I biked down to Murrayfield early in the morning, and I couldn't find anyone to come with me. The test attracted around 1,000 people. I sat down in the stands, and the first person who sat next to me couldn't help herself. She turned to me and said, "Isn't this exciting?" As far as I could tell, I was the only one, unfortunately, wearing tram-themed clothing. Perhaps the most interesting part of the exercise was the feeling that everyone had finally found kindred spirits, or at least a place where you could be sure that you'd be free of the constant anger about the trams. It felt a bit like a lot of people just out of the closet visiting a gay club for the first time. It was also fascinating how mundane it became really quickly. This is the first time anybody had ridden a tram ever, and they're just like waiting around on the phone, reading a book, getting a little bit bored. Around this time, I started having some really awkward conversations. Everybody I'd been talking to had assumed that I was super pro-tram, which is strange, because if I actually check my very handy list of things that I like, it's not on there. I don't really like trams in any way, like in the same way that a war historian doesn't like war. I'm just really interested in it, and I think it's a really important thing to explore. These kinds of things, these kinds of slogans, there's so much negativity about large public works projects. So much of that taps into existing suspicions and fears. Spending public money is a flashpoint, especially when you combine it with public transport. So one thing that's really interesting is that the last 18 months of the tram project ran super smoothly. It even finished ahead of the revised schedule. The first passenger tram ran on the 31st of May. I was there, and I had my T-shirts for sale. This generated a fair amount of interest from the surprisingly large crowd assembled at 5:30 a.m. I was interviewed a few times, and some people, well, I'll talk about, some people wrote a play about the Edinburgh trams called Bloody Trams. You may have seen it, the Travers. They were particularly interested in me. They bought 2 of the 6 shirts I sold that day. The timing was really interesting. It was 5:30 in the morning. This is the people using the shirts in the play. The timing coincided perfectly with people stumbling out of the casino that's right on Queen Street, right there, at kick-out time, who usually would just shout obscenities about the train. The staff were incredibly helpful. And really, really pleased to see me. I was quite worried about them kicking me out, but they actually were so pleased that I instantly made a new policy of giving every tram worker a t-shirt. They loved it, and they were so pleased. And it was kind of a great reminder to that behind every extremely terrifyingly huge project, there are actual people who are keenly aware of the failings and are also working hard to overcome them. Here in Dundee, you're embarking on your own huge, large public-scale project that also is maybe running 3 years late. But certainly, the Dundee City Council is absolutely far, far, far better prepared to deal with this than the Edinburgh one. But it's just, I think there's many lessons to be taken from Worth Waiting For and the Edinburgh trams in general. It's so much easier to be negative than to give something thought, right? Every large project will have tons of doubters. You've probably already seen tons of these types of internet commenters about virtually every single news project about the Dundee redevelopment. It's a waste, right? So whilst I think everybody in this room is very, very much in favor of the Dundee redevelopment, what will happen when those haters get really loud and organized? I'm not going to advocate relentless positivity. I've lived in the UK way too long to believe that that would work. But I think that we can all agree that there's negativity. How do we engage with it? Is it worth waiting for? I know I was.